Mic check one,
Yo,
two.
get out of here with them weak ass shoes, yo.
Balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
Welcome, Balls Deep fam, to another episode of Balls Deep with Devin Jovan. If you're new to the program, I'm your host Devin, and I'm joined by my co-host Jovan. This is our first episode post-draft. So if you tune into our mock draft 2.0 or mock draft special, we appreciate you. But with us not dropping an episode last week, this is technically our 1 year anniversary episode, so it's very special, near and dear to us. And the only way to honor our 1 year anniversary is to do almost the exact thing we did in our first episode, and that was recapping the NFL draft. I mean, it's only right in doing so, and it's honestly a pleasure, having this platform and just sharing our passion with everybody. So if you guys been with us along the way, thank you for joining the Balls Deep family along the way, whether you were here from episode 1 or anywhere down the road. Even if this is your very first episode, we thank you for tuning in. But with that being said, before we jump in, this episode technically will be dropping on the 12th, and I wanted to wish my guest over here a happy early birthday, because by the time the next episode drops, his birthday will already pass. So happy birthday, Jovan. I hope you have a banger this year, because Mr. It's number 24.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know what I mean? Coping up, so I'm excited. Big things hopefully for that 24th year. But like Devin was saying, we appreciate you who have followed us for the past year and listened to us ramble on about our sports takes. Something that we love to do, something we really enjoy. So we appreciate you guys, following us along throughout this year, or whether you were watching for the whole year or not. We appreciate the support.
Yeah, definitely. And we lost you there for a little bit, but it's okay. You're back, and we see you. So the only way to get started, I would normally say let's just name winners and losers right off rip, but we can leave that for last. I'm pretty sure we did that last year, so we'll do that again. But let's just start off with your favorite selection, or no, not favorite selection. What was the biggest surprise this draft or this go around with this year's draft?
So biggest surprise, and it's funny, really for me is like, so as the draft's going on, I'm watching it with a buddy of ours, Felix, at his house, talking through the Xbox party to our friends through his with Danny, our friend Danny, who's a Bears fan, and he's a Bears fan, but he hasn't been keeping up with as much football as of late. So, he was asking me how the draft was going. I was messing with him. I'm like, oh, the Bears don't got any picks this draft. You know what I mean? And as the Giants are up on the king, and I'm like, oh, shit, Danny, the Giants just traded their pick away to the Bears. And no, I shit you not, like 10 seconds later, the Bears name pops up where the Giants are. And they're like, the Giants just traded their pick to the Bears. So, honestly, that was because the Bears not only got their quarterback of the future, which is obviously a huge need. I mean, the story surrounding the Bears for the past, few years has been, their quarterback situation. You know what I mean? They drafted Mitch Trubisky, and that's literally anybody's been talking about in terms of Chicago for the last few years. And so they got their quarterback of the future, and it's a guy that I've loved, obviously, being an Ohio State fan. That for me just made that pick that much sweeter for the Bears because it was a guy that I don't think should have fell that far. I was actually very surprised that he fell that far. But when a team like the Bears takes the initiation or initiative to go trade up and get their guy for them, and that's why it was my favorite pick, because it was a team that really needed him and a player that I really love. So.
And I see that you had like the biggest surprise and favorite pick intertwined a bit, and it's funny that you do that because mine does the same. And it actually has to do with what you were talking about. So I'll talk about what you said first. That is actually hilarious. I didn't know that until now. But I think I agree with you. He shouldn't have fell that far, but I do think it's a really good landing spot for him. Matt Nagy and that team, or Matt Nagy and his coaching staff, is on the hot seat. They missed out on the opportunity of drafting the likes of Deshaun Watson, but now they get the opportunity to work with a quarterback that's very similar in play style to a Deshaun Watson. So hopefully it works out for the both of them, because Matt Nagy is a great offensive mind. It just hasn't worked out thus far in Chicago. But now moving to what I'm saying, the biggest surprise for me was the fact that, one, the Eagles traded up with the Cowboys to jump the Giants to then get Devontae Smith, so they worked together. But the biggest surprise of them all to me was the fact that Dave Gettleman, he passed on Micah Parsons, which he was, a fan of, and he, for the first time in his career, first time ever, he traded back with the Bears to number 20. And that was a surprise in itself. And he still got value in the pick with drafting Kadarius Toney, who is a playmaker with the ball in his hand. And he was able to get a first round pick next year, along with the 20th pick, a 5th round pick in this year's draft, and a 4th round pick next year. But then that's not where he stopped. The very next round, he traded back again for the second time in his career. And he was able to, acquire not only the 50th pick in the draft, which they went with Aziz Ogilari, who is my favorite pick of the draft. He also got a 3rd round pick next year. So now the Giants go into next year with 2 1st round picks, 2 3rd round picks, and 2 4th round picks. So he's finally catching up to the modern times. I'm happy. He seems to be actually using analytics like he's been claiming for, who knows how long. But he's finally embracing it. And that was the biggest surprise to me. So kudos to him, because he did get value out of both picks along with the draft capital. But Aziz Ojulari is my favorite selection. As a Georgia fan, there was, no doubt in my mind that he was a top 3 pass rusher in this draft. And he shouldn't have fell that far. We ended up getting him at 50. And we were looking at him, at drafting him possibly at 11 or even 20. So the fact that we got him at 50, it just amazes me. He's a top 3 pass rusher in this draft. The reason why he fell, there's questions about a knee injury that he had back in high school, which if you watch his tape in college, there should be no questions on his game. I mean, he led the SEC in sacks this past season, and I think forced fumbles, which was 4. So the dude is a stud, and he's a perfect fit for what Patrick Graham needs on defense. So if he's able to, live up to the hype, which I have no doubts about, that he's exactly what we needed. And he's going to be opposite of probably Lorenzo Carter, and he can obviously, fill a void that the Giants needed for some time now. So that's definitely going to be beneficial. So that's my favorite pick. So it's just funny that we both talked about the Giants on that one. But what was the biggest, or what do you think was the safest pick in the draft? In your opinion?
I mean, the safest pick for the draft is another guy who kind of slid down. I expected him to get. I mean, slid down is kind of a relative term. This guy is arguably, in my opinion, probably a top, almost a guaranteed. In my opinion, almost a guaranteed, surefire pick, a safe pick. It's Penei Sewell. I mean, everybody was by far, or I won't say by far, but the obvious choice at tackle in terms of number 1 tackle. The guy could have like arguably been a top 3 pick. Depending on need, could have gone 1. But he's one of those guys who you're going to be able to plug in on your line immediately and not have to worry about. You know what I mean? He's a guy who's got a lot of foot speed. He's a zone blocker that generates a lot of push. He's very strong. So I think he's going to make an immediate impact for the Lions, which is going to be great because they have plenty of running backs that are going to get a lot of help from that extra. I think he's, like I said, he's as surefire a Hall of Famer as you're gonna get if you name any one of these guys in this, top 10 this draft and say who you can say going to the Hall of Fame. It's this guy. I mean, he's the safest pick. I was surprised that the Bengals didn't go with them at 5 more specifically, but I can't be mad at them for going to Jamar Chase either. But Penei Sewell is probably the most surefire guy, I think.
The funny thing that you mentioned is that I was going to mention him. So he definitely is the most surefire guy. It did surprise me what team he went to, because I did suspect that, the Bengals were questioning on going with him. They wanted to go with Jamar Chase, which I mentioned in the mock draft. But I didn't think they were going to have the cojones to, pull the trigger on it. And they sure as hell did. And when they did, I figured, Miami might go in that direction. They traded all that draft capital, or they received all that draft capital in trading Laramie Tunsil away, and then getting, Penei Sewell would have been perfect. But then the fact that he went to the Lions and then the GM went bananas, that was amazing. I think it is a perfect fit. He's going to be DeAndre Swift's best friend, Jared Goff's best friend. They're going to be taking him out to dinner for a very long time, because he's going to, create holes and create time in the pocket for these guys. But being that you mentioned Swell, I'm going to mention somebody that I mentioned already, Micah Parsons. He's already, the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. It was surprising that, he went to the Cowboys of all teams, and it sucks because, we're going to have to play him. I already said that he was the best defensive player in this draft, and it's almost like with Chase Young. He was the best defensive player in that draft, and he went to the Washington, and now we play him twice a year. Now we're gonna have to play Micah Parsons twice a year. So Micah Parsons, I have no doubt, will if not be in the in contention for Defensive Player of the Year this year. He's gonna be all over the field for the Cowboys. Their linebacker core looks crazy with Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch, now Micah Parsons, and Jabril Cox. That's something that scares me going up against that team, but they still have their secondary is still questionable. But with Micah Parsons, I think he's going to be all over the field, and with the Cowboys being on national television so many times and getting so much primetime games, he's gonna be the favorite to win that award. He can literally play the middle, he can play the edge, he can play the outside. He's gonna be the one to cover these tight ends. Like a Kyle Pitts, for example, who is a mismatch. You can't really man him with the corner because he's going to beat you with size and strength, and then you can't man him with the normal linebacker because he's just going to, kill you with speed. But Michael Parsons is a former running back, and he's going to be able to keep up with those kind of mismatches in the middle. And especially with Jalen Smith's struggles last year in coverage, Michael Parsons is going to be their go-to guy for pass coverage.
Yeah, I mean, and I really like that. I really like that pick. Especially if we're talking best, situations. I know people love a lot. Another thing for Micah Parsons is coming in as a linebacker who is so versatile, and who is already such a talented player. To go into a linebacker room like that already, and not really have to be that anchor immediately on that defense. But you just can learn so much from those guys, like you said, Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, and already kind of needs it right now due to the fact that they, don't really have a secondary. But Michael Parsons has the ability to kind of move everywhere and make things a little bit easier for you when you're the Cowboys on the defensive side of the ball. So I think just in terms of situational and being in a amazing, great spot for him. But also, like you said, he's just so versatile and already such an amazing defensive player that, he's just put in a perfect position to succeed. Not that he wouldn't anywhere else, but It's really hard to focus so much at a Leighton Vander Esch and a Jalen Smith also lining up across
Yeah,
from you as
exactly.
well. So,
So
yeah, it's definitely a beautiful
yeah,
situation for
and
him.
he's still a raw talent. As talented as he is, he's still a raw talent. He's new to
Yeah,
the position. He was, like I said, he was a former running back. He was a high school running back, so he's still new to the position. He's still got ways to go in terms of learning. But to go to the Cowboys and be under Dan Quinn's threshold, who is a really good defensive coordinator, although I find him to be more versatile than these guys, in just his abilities because he's a freak of like a freak of an athlete. I'm assuming he's going to fill the Deion Jones, Bobby Wagner roles that you know were under Dan Quinn's scheme at some time. So my assumption is he's going to fulfill that role. But obviously they're going to move him around a little bit more as a chess piece because he's not just a middle linebacker. He can play outside. He can play edge. He's going to create some pressure, and I'm interested in seeing what they do with him. But I'm not interested in seeing what he does against the Giants. So hopefully we can lock
no,
that man up.
yeah. It's gonna be a matchup
Yeah,
nightmare.
exactly.
Yeah.
But now that we talked about safest pick, what do you think was the biggest wild card? So like, who's the biggest unknown? Who's the boom or bust prospect that first comes to your mind that was drafted?
So honestly, it's not a surprise that he went here to me at all. It was a meme, honestly, for everybody pre-draft. So it wasn't a surprise to me that this guy went here. To succeed, this is the perfect spot for him to. But I think there's so many unknowns about quarterback Mac Jones. Because obviously he had an amazing Heisman-worthy season at Alabama, but that it obviously due to the fact that he's an Alabama product, a guy that we really haven't seen on the field as much as really, and that's the reason he fell. I mean, people don't really know that he has the 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 physical capabilities. I mean, pretty good. He's a pretty good leader. We saw what he did at Alabama, but in terms of just like raw talent, where he went and he was drafted at what I think 15.
Yeah.
By the Patriots, and he was probably what the fourth or fifth quarterback taken but it almost seems like we don't really know how high of a ceiling he actually has. You know what I mean? How much more is he going to be able to develop a pro NFL quarterback? Um, so I think that's the biggest thing is he's the unknowns of him are more so, and even when we did, the stats were there. But obviously, when you're playing for Alabama, the stats are going to be there. But when we watch the tape and see, when just watch him play, is the next level talent there? The biggest question mark.
Yeah. So I agree. It was actually surprising that the Patriots were able to just sit right there and just have him fall into their lap. I mean, my thing is, what was the walk to the States though? People joked about it, saying like he looked like he was going to go snitch on somebody. That was a meme, man. That was probably the best meme coming out of the draft, I'd say. But I've been on record of saying this player already, so I'll mention him again, but this is not my answer by any means. Zach Wilson, I think, is a boom or bust prospect. I think he's probably the biggest in the draft just because of how high he went. He went number 2. And the amount of talent that he played on the collegiate level wasn't as good as the other guys. So his tape is amazing, but there's also moments in his tape that aren't amazing. I mentioned before he has like the ceiling of a Kyler Murray, but he has the floor of a Johnny Manziel. You don't really know what you're gonna get. It's like one or the other. I hope for the best for this guy, but you never know. I mean, the Jets they seem to be moving in the right direction in terms of surrounding him with better pieces than they did with Sam Darnold. So let's hope for his sake that that's the case. But my answer is Kelvin Joseph, the corner from Kentucky who got drafted to the Cowboys. in the second round, and he he's truly a boomer bust prospect because his ceiling is really good. He's super athletic. His size is the prototypical corner that you're looking for. And he played well. He played in the SEC and he was up for any challenge. Like he played against Kyle Pitts, Devontae Smith, all the top guys in the country. He was going up against, and he had his fair share, but he also got embarrassed. He got embarrassed by Kyle Pitts, for example, and he also got embarrassed in Ole Miss. It was to the point where after the Florida game, he opted out and basically declared for the draft right away. So that's not good. But he is super athletic. He's good in terms of short yardage or short to medium yardage in coverage. He's a better man corner than anything. I know Dallas seems to be leaning towards that cover 3 scheme, which they ran in Seattle with the Legion of Boom. But this guy is best in press because he likes to put his hands on you and redirect you at the line of scrimmage. And the thing with him is he's almost two different players from like the waist up. Like from the waist down, he's almost like a day 3 prospect. His hands are really well. He's super intelligent, but his hips are super slow. Like turning his hips, it's not as fluid as it should be. Like we seen the video of Jeffrey Okudah at the combine last year. He's not on that level at all. So people compared him to a Marcus Cooper or Bradley Roby, which could very be true because he can play inside, he can play out. But for the Cowboys' sake, he's gonna be their cornerback too. So like, does he live up to that? I don't know. I mean, the reason why they drafted him is because they missed out on Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn in the first round. But I think he's a very talented kid. We just don't know what to expect from him. I mean, he has off the field issues. He originally was at LSU, but he transferred over after being suspended for their bowl game his freshman year. And then in Kentucky, he's only had 1 year of tape, and that was the year that he was at Kentucky this past season. And there was highs, there were lows. So you never know what to expect from this kid.
Yeah. No, I mean for the Cowboys' sake, like you say, I mean if they draft him and they're gonna need, it's really important that he is boom for them because like you said, I mean their secondary is suspect right now. They have that good linebacker core. At one point or another, they had a lot of pass rushers on the D linemen. Not that they still don't have good pass rushers, but obviously they've kind of been dropping off like flies. A lot of guys walking away from the Cowboys lately, but they really need that secondary to kind of step up because we've seen when Dak is there and healthy, and if he can be the same guy, their offense can get going. They struggled without Dak last year, but make no mistake about it, like when Dak was there, they were performing very well. Dak was in the conversation for a round. Their offensive line has always been top-notch. Obviously, that needs a little work. It's not the same as it used to be in the past years, but they still got Zeke there who can run the ball just as good as anybody. But it's really just that defensive side of the ball when they're healthy as a team that they really couldn't figure out because they've always had that. Now that they have that linebacker core, they really need to address that secondary. So they really need this kid to come out here and, like you said, he's been boom or bust, but they need him to kind of come in and step up. Yeah, so he's
the kind of guy Dan Quinn looks for in a corner. Just look at AJ Terrell. His build is very similar. So hey, hopefully for the Cowboys' sake, I mean as a Giants fan, I don't really care. But for the Cowboys' sake, you need him to be on his A game. I mean, he's not gonna be your cornerback one. He has the potential to be, but they drafted Trevon Diggs last year, who's I think was a better prospect coming out of college, but he's going to be, most likely your number one guy. So and he's going to make that leap. So hopefully he can help Kelvin Joseph through the, rookie rust or just, help him adjust to the big leagues in a sense. But he's definitely a question mark, and that's why I mentioned him. But hey, but moving forward, we're gonna talk. We already talked about our favorite pick, our biggest surprise, biggest wild card. What was your biggest steal? Like, what was the best value out of a pick that you've seen?
Honestly, I thought Elijah Moore for the Jets. I think he was a really good pick for them, specifically the Jets. But in general, because I believe he might have been the fifth or sixth wide receiver taken, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was the sixth guy taken. And honestly, I thought, in my opinion, he was probably the fourth best receiver. Obviously, it didn't go that way, and I think that was more due to the fact. I think it was more due to the teams that were picking receiver after those top three guys, because it was undeniable those top three guys, who those top three guys were. You know, regardless of how you rank them, it was Jamar Chase, it was Jalen Waddle, and it was Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
You know, but after that, I really had Elijah Moore at the fourth best receiver. He ended up getting picked 6 right in the beginning of the second round for the Jets, and I think that was huge for them. It's kind of like you said. I mean, they got their new quarterback of the future, obviously, after getting rid of Sam Darnold. But you can't make that same mistake around him. And I mean, I think Elijah Moore was a great pick for them. A guy who's gonna be able to do a lot for them. Especially now that they just drafted an offensive lineman to protect that new quarterback.
Who I think was a big
he's
sleeper.
A slot guy.
He's a sleeper.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that might be their best selection, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, like I said, he's a little slot receiver who is really good in the field. So he's gonna be great, obviously, for them right now, immediately, especially in a rebuild. You're gonna want your quarterback to probably get the ball a lot sooner. For the Jets, so it's a really good pick for them. Like I said, the fourth best wide receiver in my opinion, and he fell to them at the sixth receiver right in the beginning of the second round. They didn't really have to move for him. I honestly thought that there was going to be a team that was going to trade back in the first round for him, maybe possibly like a Titans or something, to get Elijah Moore to try to pair with A.J. Brown. But the Jets stayed exactly where they were, and they still got a great wide receiver. Like I said, I think one of the top guys. I mean, those top three guys are so ahead of the pack. It's kind of tough for Elijah Moore to crack that top three, but he's really no scrub. I mean, we saw the video with A.J. Brown having the conversation with him. And A.J. Brown himself said, like, bro, you've always been a better receiver than me. And for A.J. Brown to say that to somebody, guy. So for him to look at somebody else and be able to be honest with himself and say, look, this guy's better than me. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's
I think what he was saying,
going to be able to have immediately.
I mean, they're two different kind of receivers. So for him to say that too, I almost take it as like he's more technically sound as a receiver. Like he's
100%, and that's the thing. He's the more complete receiver, 100%. A.J. Brown's got the size.
The only slight on Elijah Moore was his size. I mean,
exactly.
But that was almost like a Devontae Smith. Like people were doubting his size, but he put up very similar numbers to a Devontae Smith. Although Devontae Smith had the greatest season from a receiver in college history, like that's putting up big numbers if you're putting up very similar numbers to that guy. Yeah. So it was a surprise that he fell out of the first round because the Packers were sitting right there at the end of the first round, and they could really use a receiver to go across Devontae Adams. I think he would have been a perfect fit, but they decided not to move with him. And the Jets, for their new quarterback, they not only got a offensive lineman, they got a receiver, they got a running back. They seem to be doing everything right at this given moment in comparison to what they did with Sam Darnold. But I think Elijah Moore is
and like I said, I mean Elijah Moore.
Go ahead.
What were you saying? No, I was just saying. I mean,
yeah.
And Elijah Moore is probably, like I said, aside from Devontae Smith, we know how talented he is. Honestly, he's probably the best route runner that was in this draft. It's just overall a really good pick for the draft, especially to be able to sit there right at the top of the second, not have to move, and you still get the guy, not have to do anything for him. It's overall amazing pick for the Jets.
Yeah. So with my biggest steal of the draft was Asante Samuel Jr. to the Chargers at 47. I really like this pick. I really do. I mean, they got rid of Casey, or they let Casey Hayward walk, or they got rid of Casey Hayward this offseason, so they really need corners. They have Chris Harris already there, so this is a perfect veteran to mentor this guy. I mean, look no further in terms of a pro comp. Asante Samuel Jr. is almost like Asante Samuel 2.0. I mean, that's the best comp I could think of at the moment. The dude is just technically sound. He's fluid in his motions. He's very instinctive as a corner. He's a ball hawk, and he's quick in terms of his change of direction. He did well in terms of his testing, his pro day. But just look at the film. Like, the dude was third team All ACC in 2019 with 14 pass breakups and an interception, and had a team leading 3 interceptions in 2020 in 8 games before opting out. So the dude is no scrub, and the fact that they got him in the second round at where they did, like, I think that value is really good, and he's gonna be able to play inside out, almost like a Chris Harris. And having Chris Harris there, mentoring him, hopefully they get Derwin James back. That secondary is on the up and up, honestly, and I'm expecting him to have a similar impact to Antoine Winfield Jr. What he did with the Bucks. Obviously, they play 2 different positions, but the impact that Antoine Winfield Jr. played on that defense, in that secondary in particular, I think Asante Samuel Jr. will have a similar impact on the Chargers defense and their secondary. But I don't know if you have anything to add to what I just said, but if not, we can move forward.
Yeah, I think the biggest sleeper, mid to late.
Biggest sleeper, yep. So our biggest sleeper. So when we mean sleeper, we're talking about mid to late round prospect. So like 3rd round or later. Who has the most star potential? Who's your selection?
I apologize. Hold on here. But yeah, my biggest sleeper, Kellen Mond. The Vikings picked him from Tech QB, Texas A&M. Right in the beginning of the 3rd round, I think the second pick of the 3rd round, Kellen Mond. I think he's a very developmental prospect. He has a lot of talent, a very raw talent. He's got a lot of arm strength. The kid's got a lot of athletic ability. I think the biggest thing for Kellen Mond is his accuracy. I think if the Vikings can work on that with him, get his accuracy and his passing up due to the fact that he's already got such great athletic ability. He's got very good arm strength, a good release, very quick, and he's very good at leading his receivers well. But like I said, he just needs a better presence in the pocket, and he needs better accuracy. So getting him, right there early in the 3rd round, obviously the Vikings have struggled with QB lately. They really haven't found a guy that they could say is their guy of the future. So like I said, having him sit right now and just developing him, helping him really just transition well. This is kind of a perfect spot, or a good spot for him to kind of transition into a starter, because I don't think the Vikings have any plans to compete right now. And obviously we've seen Dalvin Cook's capabilities of putting that offense on his back to start a guy like Kellen Mond immediately, or give him some reps immediately. Being able to hand the ball off to Dalvin Cook when you're not having your best day is the worst thing. So like I said, I think he's a very developmental prospect. Obviously, you wish you have a better quarterback to, kind of coach him up. But due to the fact that the Vikings aren't really competing right now anyways, I think this is a good spot for him over and be the starting quarterback due to the fact that they really don't have anybody, namely to be that guy, at least. So I think Kellen Mond's a really probably my sleep or Yeah, probably my best sleep mid to late round pick.
Yeah, so it was funny because after the selection, RG3 was on like the draft recap, or they were breaking down each and every pick, and he basically came out and said, he loved the selection of Kellen Mond, but number 8 over there in Minnesota isn't happy, and he said he's not happy because he's everything that he isn't. So, and that's coming from RG3, a former teammate of him, of Kirk Cousins. So I think he has star potential all over him. I think he could possibly be the Dak Prescott of this draft class when it is all said and done. So I think he's a really good selection. They were rumored to wanting to trade up, possibly, or hoping that Justin Fields fell to them in the first round because they were going to pull the trigger on Justin Fields. Unfortunately, they weren't able to. Their division rival got him, and they ended up with Kellen Moore. I mean, that in the third round. So that's not a bad selection at all. But my biggest sleeper, my mid to late round prospect, who I think has the most star potential, it was the 100th selection in the draft, and that was Elijah Molden to the Titans. He shouldn't have fell this far. He honestly shouldn't have. The only reason why he fell this far was because teams looked at him solely as a slot corner. I mean, in college he played safety at Washington, but they looked at him solely as a slot corner because he's undersized, and that's the reason why he dropped. But honestly, people like Aqib Talib thought the Giants should have picked him over Aaron Robinson because they look at Aaron Robinson as a slot corner as well. But this dude is really good, and his coverage ability is nice. So with the everyone doubted him, but the Titans are going to be able to reap the benefits of being able to grab this guy because they got rid of Adoree Jackson this offseason, Malcolm Butler this offseason, Kenny Vaccaro. So they're on straight rebuild with that secondary, and now they drafted Caleb Farley in the first round, and then now Elijah Molden in the third round. And he's going to be able to play next to a Kevin Byard or even be their slot corner. He has that versatility to be that nickel corner or even just in that sub package. He's going to be able to be on the field at all times. He's truly talented. So I'm going to read you the stat really quick. Of the 75 Power 5 defensive backs who have logged at least 500 snaps in the slot in PFF college era since 2014, no one has earned a higher slot coverage grade, a 91.2, forced more completions, 21, or recorded more passing stops, 36, than the Washington Huskies defensive back. Despite his 5'10", 190-pound frame, Molden is one of the most physical tacklers in the class, and he pairs that with short area quickness and fantastic eyes in coverage. So I think Titans got a real stud in this selection, and I think he's more polished at the moment. So I think he's going to make a bigger immediate impact than Caleb Farley will. He's more polished as a prospect, I say, but Farley just has a higher ceiling. But having him there will allow Farley the time to develop into the player that the Titans truly need him to be. So I think it's a really good selection. I think it's a really good duo in that secondary to add to Kevin Byard, who's one of the best safeties in the league, and very, underrated and not talked about enough. I think Elijah Molden was a really, I think it was a really good selection.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, especially due to the fact that, we all know some of the biggest news in this offseason was the fact that Adoree Jackson was a guy that, walked away, a guy that was no longer with the Titans. Obviously, we on the field due to health, but he's a huge piece for any team. He's one of the best corners in the game when he's healthy. So that was definitely a need for the Titans to address, was that cornerback spot. And, I think at that position, to get a guy like that for a steal was a perfect pick. I agree.
So we talk about sleepers. We talk about, biggest steals, biggest reach. And I'll go first on this one just because I'm surprised on this selection. Alex Leatherwood to the Raiders at 17.
That's my That's your biggest reach. That's mine too. That's funny.
That's just how that.
I'll go somewhere else, but that's fun.
Yeah, but that just goes to show
I,
on how much of a reset was.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
on like film, he's a solid offensive lineman. He was projected to be a round 2 selection, if not round 3. But to pick him in the first round and then top 20 selections at that, it kind of threw me off. I mean, I get they need offensive linemen, and Elijah Vera Tucker could have been the selection, but he was picked, just traded up before them and selected him. Alex Leatherwood didn't test well at his pro day. He wasn't, the next best offensive lineman on the board. They could have went with, a bunch of different directions, like a Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins, like any other direction, but they go with Alex Leatherwood. That's kind of what was mind blowing to me. So I say it was the biggest reach, but should they, let's say, drafted their second round selection in Trevon Moehrig, who I think was their best selection and probably the only good selection I thought they had. If they drafted him in the first and then Leatherwood in the second, I don't think we'd be talking about their draft class right now. I think everyone would be satisfied with going Moehrig than Leatherwood.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's funny that we had the same pick. Like you said, it goes to show you. Yeah, not that Leather was a scrub. I mean, he's not. I mean, he got a lot of power. He's the ability to really just stuff guys in the run game. But it's just not good at the spot. I mean, a lot of people had him ranked 40 overall. And he goes top 20 in the whole entire draft. And obviously, sometimes guys can get picked higher than you got to go by your overall rank every time. It goes by position as well, but that big of a drop off for a guy like that in the first round, a guy that you on and waited for the second round, and probably still got him. A lot of people think he might be better as a guard. He started. People think that he might start as a guard in the NFL and maybe move on to tackle as he, becomes more effective and develops into a tackle. So we'll see how that goes. I'm better off if the Raiders do it that way, starting him at guard rather than tackle right away. I think they'll benefit from it more. I think Leatherwood will benefit from it more. But yeah, just at this spot, there was a lot of different directions they could have gone, even at that position, and they kind of reached. I won't use the same one. So I'm going to go round 2, pick 62. Green Bay Packers went with Josh Myers, center from Ohio State. As an Ohio State fan, obviously I love Josh Myers. This guy's a scrub, but it was a huge reach. I mean, when we're talking about position and we're talking about rank and where guys are drafted, and you're ranked not even the top 150, you're drafting them at 62. That's horrible. There was a lot of questions about his pass protection. There's a lot of questions about his pass protection ability. Pro Football Focus had him. I guess he had a 65 pass blocking grade this past season at Ohio State, so he struggles significantly in the pass protection, and that's just something that you have to address, when you get to the pros. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really tough, over in Green Bay for him, because obviously, when you're pass protecting for one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, you're gonna not see 5 graded, pass rush or pass protection. There's absolutely no way. So like I said, not that this guy's a scrub, but to pick him at where they did and when they did, it was huge reach for the Green Bay Packers.
I think they were just desperate at that point because they did lose Corey Linsley this offseason, which was their center and one of the best centers in the league last year. So
yeah, of course.
The fact that they lost him in free agency because they chose not to sign him and they chose to sign Aaron Jones, re-sign Aaron Jones, I think this was a desperate, reach. You would know more
No,
than I would in
100%.
terms of how talented Josh Myers is. But they needed offensive line help, and it just seems like they kind of didn't really go BPA. They really just focused on a need at that point.
And I'm completely okay with that need when it's not when we're not reaching as far as the Green Bay Packers did. You know what I mean? When it's that bad, you're available because this is a player that could have easily been available for them later in their pick in round 3. They could have just as easily gotten another center like Quinn Miners in round 3. So you know what I mean? It's like I said. Obviously, you need to go offensive line. You need to address the fact that Corey Linsley left in terms of center, but you could have easily still drafted a guy just as good at center, or even the same guy at center in round 3, rather than having to reach so far up, and still got a good pick that was worthy of the 62 at 62.
It's funny because
But
last year for our draft episode we talked a lot about the Packers, and it seems like they're not learning their lesson. They're not. I mean, they reached on Dylan last year, which they didn't really need. They went ahead and got their heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers last year, and in the first round at that, and they could have used other positions. So we're gonna go. I'm gonna go losers first, and I was going to go with a different team, but now that you mention it, what? I'm just gonna go with the Packers once again this year. I picked them last year, and I'm gonna pick them again. Just one, because to start the draft, there was news that wasn't draft related, but Aaron Rodgers came out and said that he no longer wants to play for the franchise, and he basically wants to cut ties with the Packers, almost like Deshaun Watson in a sense. So keep the same energy. Those that don't agree with the Deshaun Watson take, keep the same energy with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I'm on the side of Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson. I think the organizations aren't working in their favor at all. And so the fact that he wants out, and then now there's repercussions saying that Devontae Adams is saying that if Aaron Rodgers isn't there, he might have to think very hard on whether he wants his future to stay there as well. But there's rumors that Aaron Rodgers won't stay unless they fire the GM, which isn't a good look. They went with Eric Stokes out of Georgia, the corner in the first round, which I don't think is a bad selection because Kevin King was getting fried this whole entire past postseason when they needed him most. So, and he's a guy who has like speed, like he's fast. So they could use some speed on the outside, but people can say that put their finger on it and kind of say it was a reach, but I think his athleticism is what allowed his stock to rise. But the best selection was Amari Rodgers, the receiver, their slot receiver out of Clemson. Outside of that, and maybe Stokes, they didn't really have a really good draft. So with the draft class that they selected, plus the Aaron Rodgers news, I'm just going to mark them as a loser. And I think everyone else should as well. You're muted.
See, like I was saying, the Packers aren't looking too hot right now. I agree. I don't know that the reports of I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the type of guy that's going to say, "No, I'm fired. I'm not playing again." He actually has kind of addressed it, saying that he plans on playing for the Packers regardless. Obviously, he wants things figured out, but I don't think he's that type of guy. Aaron Rodgers wants to win football games. I don't think he's going to go out there and say he needs somebody to get for him to go and do that. I think he just wants things to be addressed in a better way. I think he's just upset with the way that Packers have been kind of fumbling the bag. And I don't disagree with him. But definitely fumbling the bag. But with that being said, probably the only team worse in general. So call them losers of the draft if you want. I'm going to call them losers. Overall, because they suck. The Houston Texans are horrible. After a 4-12 season, obviously, it was not due to the fact, they only had 5 picks, and their first one was until the 3rd round. But either way, that's horrible. I mean, after a 4-12 season, to only have 5 picks won and to have your first one be in the 3rd round is not a good look.
And the fact that as a quarterback,
Especially having this cute 100% was the first pick was a quarterback, and it's just crazy. This team with their quarterback situation currently, I just don't see any way the Texans could have won this draft or like done anything to kind of salvage this. It's kind of unfortunate because, and not to say that they didn't have any good picks, but it's hard to say that you weren't a loser with a team and you really had nothing to work with in terms of addressing it. You know what I mean? And in my opinion, that immediately makes them the biggest loser because they are one of the teams that needed a huge draft and they just really had no picks to be able to go out there and have a good draft. And that's nobody's fault but their own due to, the trades they've made in previous years that put them in this situation to not have a 1st-round pick and not have a 2nd-round pick. It's just they have a lot of rebuilding to do.
You know what's so funny?
In order to do that,
this is the 1-year anniversary of the first episode, and we both came full circle because I'm pretty positive you selected the Texans as the losers of the draft last year, and I picked the Packers last year, and we picked them again.
Suck. And like I said, it's not even due to the fact that they maybe didn't get the right players, but it's just like it's hard to really overcome the fact that you're as bad as you are and you don't draft until the 3rd round. That's alarming. And the fact that anybody has a job that's worked with that team crazy.
It's funny because, like, I'm not against Davis Mills as a prospect, but the fact that you continue to say Deshaun Watson is my quarterback, but then you go out and you sign in free agency like Tyrod Taylor, then you go out and trade for another quarterback and then draft a quarterback. It seems like they're addressing the quarterback any way or any chance they get, but Deshaun Watson is their quarterback. You get what I'm trying to say? So, like, they're obviously putting on a front for everybody. Everyone knows and that they don't have the upper hand in the situation, and either Deshaun Watson's not going to play at all this season or he's going to get traded one way or another. So they're definitely a loser, like, in life.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not even the fact that they didn't draft good players. Like you said, Davis Mills is not a bad quarterback. Nico Collins is a great wide receiver. He's got a lot. Yeah, I mean he's a huge receiver with great speed. I mean that you got two and one. You dress a guy that can stretch the field with his speed, but he's also 50-50 balls. You know what I mean? Which is great for them. That's something that they definitely needed. But like I said, just to be in the position that you season, being 3rd in your division, a division that, and not to say there are good teams in that division, but a division that hasn't been, one of the biggest, in previous years, and you just come off a 4-12 season and you really can't do anything to even address that.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate for them, and it's nobody's fault but their own in previous years and putting themselves in that situation, and that's why for me they're just their biggest losers because they had so much to address and not enough to be able to draft.
Yeah, I see what you're saying because they didn't draft, like, their draft class is only 5 players. It's not a bad draft class, but it's just they kind of hindered themselves with what they've done, and the fact that they go ahead and use their first selection on a quarterback when they have bigger needs. It kind of just blows my mind. Even with Deshaun Watson, possibly being out, they have bigger needs. Like, I don't see Davis Mills.
Definitely.
I don't see Davis Mills being their quarterback of the future should Deshaun Watson leave. So I think they could have addressed another need that they possibly had. But if I had to pick another team too, I just mentioned it. This is the team I was gonna go with originally was the Raiders, just because I mentioned it before. Moreg was the only selection I liked in their draft class. Outside of that, it was kind of a shit show. And with Mayock and Gruden, since being under their their control, it's almost kind of hard to predict what they do because they always have an out of the box selection in a way. But to go with the winners of the draft, I'll let you go first on this one because I feel like I've been stealing some of yours. But who's your winner of this draft?
So I had a couple. I was thinking of a couple. I think the Bears, solely off of, not to say they have a good draft, but solely off of that first pick, I wanted to pick them because that was really huge for them. But as winners of the draft as a whole, I have to go with the Jets. I think the Jets were able to do the best with what they had, and not to say that like they really have much, but I mean they really addressed some of the biggest needs. I mean, they got rid of Darnold this offseason, and so they went out and got their quarterback of the future. Then, like we said, they needed to surround. They did Sam Darnold. They went out and got a guy, like I said, who I thought could have been a middle of the first round. I thought somebody was going to trade up for him. They gave him Elijah Moore. They gave him Michael Carter, who's a really speedy back, very quick feet, very good, explosive, hits the holes, very sharp cuts, like a very great running back. They got probably the best guard in the draft in Elijah Vera Tucker, which was huge for them. Another great pick, which was
draft.
100%, a very good guard, a very lengthy guy, very good in the run game, very good body control. He's just like guards in this draft, probably the best guard in this draft, but also the versatility to play tackle if you need him to. That's huge for them right now. You know what I mean?
Especially with Mekhi Becton's history, like his rookie season, he played well when healthy, but he also missed time due to health.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the Jets. I mean, they really were just hitting on every single one of their picks. They were grabbing a need, and not even just a need, but just a solid guy at that, like I said, that those first four picks specifically, because they went straight offense for the first four picks, and then defense every other pick after that. And like I said, they got safety Jamie and Sherwood. They got, actually, it's funny. They drafted two Michael Carters, which that we were talking about. They drafted two Michael Carters.
They got Michael Carter and Michael Carter the second.
Michael Carter. They got Jason Pinna, cornerback from Pittsburgh. I mean, like I said, they were just hitting on every pick. In positions of need, and just drafting like guys who, like I said, like they shouldn't have been there when the Jets were there. They were just drafting straight dogs at great spots. A lot of steals for the Jets, in my opinion, outside of, because the number 2 pick you can't really consider a steal. But
the Elijah Vera Tucker,
just overall great draft for the Jets. I think. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the Elijah Vera Tucker selection. Although they moved up and people can say they gave up a lot for him, he's gonna fill a really big void that they had on. They needed offensive line, but now he's gonna play left guard next to Mekhi Becton. And should you need him at left tackle, he can move at left tackle. He played both positions at USC very well. So I mean, that's probably my favorite selection of theirs. And then right behind it would be your sleeper or your best value pick was Elijah Moore. I think adding him to that offense is going to only help Zach Wilson with his rookie year and transitioning.
Yeah, and I even made a joke with our boy who was actually on our mock draft special, the Jet. Obviously, we know he's a Jets fan. I made a little joke with him over Instagram that we might finally get to see a New York versus New York. It was a half joke, but I mean, it's very possible down the line. I mean, the Jets are very young. Obviously, we haven't seen them put any yet. We've seen some of the Giants, but we haven't really seen. We've only really seen these teams on paper.
For sure.
But with the potential that these teams really pack, it's definitely a possibility down the line if they develop correctly. And again, if there's any time for the Jets to kind of turn everything be a good football team, it's now. You know, the Patriots aren't really the Patriots. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions surrounding the Patriots after Tom Brady left last season. You know, a lot better. Obviously, we know they're very good. Josh Allen is playing MVP football. You know, they have a really good defense. Tua over in Miami's coming into his own. So, I mean, obviously that division is very young. Uh, so it's for the taking at this point. And I think the Jets really did themselves a good justice this draft class in terms of trying to compete draft or with the rest of the teams in that division, because they were all getting better and the Jets were kind of stagnant. Now we finally see the Jets finally kind of picking it up. And like I said, perfect timing, because that division really could go to anybody. Tom Brady and Belichick are no longer, you know, that powerhouse.
Well, there must be something in the water over there in the AFC East, because the winner, in my opinion, of this draft class was the Miami Dolphins. I'm absolutely astounded by their first 5 selections in this draft. They go ahead with their first selection, which was the 6th pick, and they go ahead and grab Jalen Waddle, who people had as the number 2 best receiver in this class. But on the Dolphins board, that was the number 1 best receiver in this class. They had him over Jamar Chase. So he's a playmaker. They're going to be able to put on the inside, on the out, and to pair with Devontae Parker. I think he already has chemistry with Tua playing at Bama. So I think that's going to help, you know, Tua get comfortable in that offense and get comfortable in terms of making that transition into the NFL, even though or making that transition from year 1 to year 2, I should say. Then they follow it up with the 18th pick and grab who some people thought was the best pass rusher in this class, but not only the best pass rusher in this class, the best defensive player in this class. And that's Jalen Phillips out of Miami. The only reason they said in terms of talent, could very well be the best defensive player in the draft, but they just had injury concerns because of his concussions at UCLA, which, you know, forced him to retire, and then he came out of retirement and transferred over to Miami. Like, the dude is a stud, and they needed a pass rush, like, bad, especially with, you know, letting Kyle Van Noy go after signing him this past offseason. Like, getting Jalen Phillips is going to be, you know, big. But my favorite selection of theirs was their third selection, which was round 2, pick 4, which was Javon Holland, safety out of Oregon. And one person who's been huge on this guy has been Maurice Jones-Drew. Maurice Jones-Drew said this man is the best defensive player in this draft. He has the versatility of playing, you know, safety or corner should you need him to. Like, he's a stud athlete. And if you watch the Oregon tape when he played, he opted out this past season. But you can see the Oregon tape, like, their defense needed him this past offseason. You can tell the difference that he made. He was a difference maker. So he's going to be a difference maker for that Miami defense, especially with Brian Flores, a defensive mind, being the head coach over there. He's going to be a difference maker for that defense with a Xavier Howard, a Byron Jones, and a bunch of other guys that they have on that side of the ball. And then they followed that up with another second-round selection, which was Liam Eichenberg, the tackle from Notre Dame. We already know Notre Dame, you can just go out and say it, they're O-line U at this point. They produce great offensive linemen, and he's a stud. He's going to fill most likely right tackle for these guys, especially with letting Eric Flowers go. They're going to have, I forget his name, one of their late round selections last year, come up and start at guard, and Eichenberg is going to fill that void at tackle. And I think he's going to make an immediate impact on day 1, because I'm assuming he's going to start, because we mocked him in our mock draft at the end of the first round to the Chiefs, and that was when they had their selection. So I think that was a big steal. And then they followed it up and got the 3rd best tight end in the class to pair with Mike Gesicki. So they got Hunter Long from Boston College. So I think those first 5 selections is, like, I don't see how anyone had a better draft than these guys. Although there's plenty of teams that had a great draft, I think, in my opinion, they're number one in my book.
Yeah, no, and I like the Dolphins draft as well, because they give me a very familiar feeling for a recipe for success that my football team is doing right now. The New York Giants, they're really just there and getting versatile guys, very talented guys, but they're really going out there and trying to find versatile players, guys that they could move around the field, guys that they can get the most. You know, if you got a guy that's a guy like Jalen Phillips, who really can play the line, but he's just he's of really playing anywhere because he's just a fast guy. A Javon Holland who can, like you said, he's a very good safety who can play man to man, who can play deep. You know what I mean? He really just getting these versatile guys that you can kind of move anywhere and team that you really need them to, and not feel like you're kind of hindered by their abilities. You know what I mean? Because you can work on the technical ability, you can get past that, you can work on those things, but just having the versatility, the physicality, the athletic ability to really move around the field and different things, that's not something you can teach. And the Miami Dolphins really did go out there and get guys that are not only very talented but very versatile. So I like the draft class as well.
And I don't outside of the draft class too. It almost seems like this year round or this draft, this time around, the Dolphins were playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Like, just look at the trade, for example, that they made. They went from being the third selection, the fourth selection in the draft, the third selection in this draft. Yeah, third selection in this draft. They traded down to 12 with the 49ers to gain that draft capital, and then move up to trade with the Eagles to number 6 to secure that they get their guy in Jalen Waddle. So they got Jalen Waddle, and they got all the draft capital for future years. It's almost like they're playing chess while everyone's playing checkers. So they're playing chess, adding all this draft capital on top of, getting the stud draft class and almost getting a perfect draft class. They did an outstanding job, and I think they probably had the best, if not one of the best draft classes this year. So I commend them on what they're doing over there.
And that Javon Holland pick that we love so much is sponsored by the Houston Texans, and so.
So is many other picks. I mean, the Texans could have used a Javon Holland. I'm just saying. But that's all we have for you guys today. So, in the comments, make sure to share your opinion on some of the stuff we said, or share some of your favorite picks. Who do you thought the winner or the losers were of the draft? And all of the topics that we mentioned. Give us your answers. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear your opinions. And we also just want to interact with you guys. So just go ahead, comment, and just make sure to go follow our guys at the Expansion Pack Podcast if you haven't already. And as a 1 year anniversary for us, we appreciate you guys for sticking with us this entire year. We honestly don't know where we'd be without you guys.
Not only that, but last few months have been kind of hectic, but the content is about to start rolling out again. Get more consistent with it, so we're gonna be hearing more from you guys. Like we say, leave comments, leave your opinions on our takes. You could talk as much shit to us as you want. We love talking shit too. So if you don't agree with our takes and you want to fry the shit out of us, so be it. Let us know. Because I'm going to fry the shit out of you back and and tell you why it's a good or bad take, or regardless. We like having sports, sports talks, and it's all in good fun. We enjoy it. Know what you want to hear. Let us know what you want to talk about. Let us know what you think of our takes. We appreciate you guys following us. And like I said, the content's going to be starting to roll out again, and we're going to have some fun in this second year for sure.
Alrighty. So until next time, guys, peace.
Deuces.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.